my masterclass today. Welcome, on the FY 2023 government fiscal year. So, good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year's. This is the start of the government's fiscal year, FY 2023. I am actually live on Facebook, LinkedIn. I decided to go live on my company Facebook page, and it looks like I accidentally went live on my personal Facebook page, but that's okay. Give me a second. And we will get started. As I said, I'm streaming to a couple of platforms. I'm using a couple of devices. So, good morning, everyone. As you enter the room, say hello. You know how we were raised. We were raised to enter a room and greet everyone in the room. I'm in the room. Say hello. I'm Luciana Turner. I am the founder of the LT&A Consulting Group. We are a government contracting, training, and consulting firm. I have over 20 years experience working in government contracting. My specialty is in government compliance. Now, as I previously stated, I am live on LinkedIn, on my YouTube channel, Facebook, and I am live on Clubhouse. Now, if any of my power partners are live and feel like jumping in the box, let me know. I'll send you the link so that we can dialogue. But I am doing this masterclass as an introduction to the government year. We know October 1st is the opening of the government year. The government runs on a fiscal year versus a calendar year. And October 1st is that fiscal year start. And the government, they just don't know how to do nice because they've already faced the shutdown and they've averted a shutdown with this, I believe it's a $1.23 trillion package that they've sent to the president to sign to avert a shutdown. And yeah, so we're waiting on him to sign that to avert a government shutdown. And let me tell you something, the government will never shut totally down. There are certain agencies that are considered critical, and there are provisions within our government that will allow certain critical agencies to always function. We will always have a national defense. Our military, even if they don't get paid, will always exist. Our police force, even if they don't get paid the full amount, will always exist. So so when they say government shutdown, it's really a shutdown of certain entities and certain agencies that are considered, quote, non-essential. So the government has already started the year off on fire with that $1.2 trillion continuing resolution to keep the government funded. Now, my Clubhouse room, I have not enabled the replays. And that is because I am posting this recording to my YouTube channel and I'm posting it to my podcast. Contractors Conversation has been transformed into a podcast. It has been a podcast for, I believe, all of 2 weeks, roughly. So Clubhouse, there are no recordings. You will have to follow me on my YouTube channel or follow the podcast. And podcast is exciting. I have some guests, but I'll talk about that later. Let me get focused back on the topic at hand, which is the government fiscal year. So we're going to, as of when I checked last night, next week's House schedule had not been posted. I didn't check the Senate because the Senate only acts upon what the House has sent. And I only want to talk about what is new for this fiscal year. There's already been some appropriations sent to the Senate to work on. And there were a couple of interesting things I believe government contractors need to be aware of. And one of which kind of flew under the radar for me. And that is there is actually a House bill 3470, which is the End of Human Trafficking in Government Contracting Act 2022. I have never heard of that act. And I'm a little ashamed of myself that I allowed that to slide right on past me. But I'm gonna be more on my Q&A this coming government year. But that one, I don't know if it's stalled. I actually downloaded it so I can read it, so I can report back on it. I don't know if that's going to be a morning tidbits topic or if that's going to be a chatter topic. But that one actually is a bill or pre-bill in the House. So yeah, that's an interesting. It's interesting that they actually thought that they had to create a bill to address human trafficking in government contracting. So I want to delve into the legislative history behind that. What even made them decide they had to even come up with that bill? Where does that come from? But I believe since it's a bill, that's a new layer of compliance that every government contractor is going to have to look for and should keep their ear to the ground about. So keep that in mind. There is also the HR 8510 strengthening whistleblower protections at the Department of Veterans Affairs. I mention that because if that passes House and passes Senate, what they normally do, it starts in the Department of Veterans Affairs. There will be an addendum, an amendment, a new bill, whatever they do. What normally happens is if it gets passed at Veterans Affairs, somebody will then come along and create a new addendum or a new bill and said, well, let's pass it everywhere. And as we know, Whistleblower Act affects everybody, especially government contractors. Your employees are protected by federal law if they report misdoings that are going on within their companies. This new Whistleblower Protection Act has some new distinctions that are being added. This is different from what currently exists. As we know, there is a current Whistleblower Act. They've come up with a new one. There's some new distinctions. I haven't sat down and compared the new bill. But if they pass this one, which is directed at the Department of Veterans Affairs, trust and believe in this fiscal year or in the next one, they will expand it to every department. Once they expand it, government contractors, they will apply the Christian doctrine to it, and it will flow down and it will appear in your RFPs and everywhere. They will add an addendum to your contracts. It will appear and it will affect you. So keep an eye on legislation that is coming out when it comes to whistleblower protection and how it could potentially affect you and your business. And I know somebody is saying, I don't have to worry about this. I do business above board. You would be surprised by what you believe is above board that actually violates government rules that could get reported and end up having you and your company in the hot seat. Compliance is an often overlooked area, especially in government contracting, because it's not cool and sexy. That companies spend trillions of dollars writing checks back to the government. DCAA, which is the Defense Contract Audit Agency, does a report to Congress every year outlining how much money they collect on behalf of the government from contractors who thought they was doing business above board, who could not sustain their costs and had to give money back to the government. So compliance is an integral part of government contracting. And I don't care how uncool or how unsexy you believe it is a key component to your government contracting strategy, and it directly affects your bottom line. So stay focused on anything that affects your bottom line, directly or indirectly, and stay focused on all of these policies and procedures that you should have outlined and written out. Because just because it's in your head doesn't mean it's in the heads of the people and the employees who work for you and report to you. So that Whistleblower Protection Act that's coming through the House or going through the House as we speak, yes, I would keep an eye out on that, because even though it says Department of Veterans Affairs, doesn't mean it's going to stay there. That's just usually how they get it in, and then they spread it like peanut butter, like I like to say it. And then this may not affect small businesses now. However, if your business strategy includes growing your business to eventually sell it, or if your business strategy is to keep an eye on businesses to sell and merge into your own, buy and merge into your own. There is a new bill, HR 3843, Merger Filing Fee Modernization Act of 2022, that's headed through the House as we speak. So you want to keep an eye on that and whatever changes that they're trying to do. They're trying to update the merger and acquisition regulations and the fees that have to be paid and how it affects the market. And look for new guidance from the Department of Justice if that goes through. There used to be this concern around monopolies and too big to fail, et cetera, et cetera. We may be moving away from that concept from too big to fail, and we may be moving back. The pendulum keeps swinging. I remember a time, because I remember when there was First Union, Wachovia, and they all merged into Wells Fargo. I remember when they was busting up all these companies. It seems as though the market volatility drives the thought process. And since we're seem to be heading into a economic downturn, commonly referred to as a recession, there's a desire to strengthen a lot of things and to strengthen the larger entities, and it will affect government contractors and small businesses, especially to strengthen these businesses and keep the dollars flowing through the markets. Because if the dollar stops flowing, we all know what happens when the dollar stops flowing. And that is one of the things that, whether you like it or not, that is the government's job, to keep money circulating through the markets. So as much as I feel we can overregulate things, I do believe it would be a good thing to make sure things keep flowing and it flows properly through the markets. But let's keep going. Now, we've all read about the fraud that's been found in the PPP loan program. We've all heard about the IRS receiving this huge budget to enact and go after. And the IRS have already said there's going to be an uptick in audits this year. They're hiring agents and they're going to do a lot more audits. There's an HR Bill 7352 to direct the PPP and bank fraud enforcement harmonization. That is a fancy way of saying they're going to bring these audits together and they're going to synchronize them. So those who receive PPP loans, they're also going to tack on a bank fraud audit to it. So they're just going to go bang for the buck. They're saying if you committed PPP loan fraud, you most likely, and we're going to say you committed bank fraud, and common sense is you did, because you had to funnel the money through the bank. So it is bank fraud. So yeah, it's getting ready to get ugly in these streets. So if I know a lot of people who complain because they were not able to receive a PPP loan. I'm going to say you should be grateful, because a lot of people took out those loans and did not do what they were supposed to do with the funds. And they thought it was going to be pretty and sweet and nobody would check. And I, as a compliance auditor, always say you will get caught. It may take a year, it may take 10 years, but you will get caught. And anytime the IRS is funded, it is not good for those who do wrong. It just isn't. And I don't know why people feel like they could take government funds and get away with it, but they do. And they're in shock and awe when they get caught. I don't understand it, but whatever. So that's another bill that I'm following through the House and Senate as it gets passed, and it will get passed, because we have to fund a myriad of other things that are gotten passed. And the way that's going to get funded is by retrieving ill-gotten goods and ill-gotten funds that have been dished out to date. And we do know that the PPP loan program has been abused. It was designed to help small businesses, and the program was a great program. I know several small businesses that got it, and they're still open today because of it. And it was a great program. It's a shame people took that money and misused it. So I, for one, think it's great. They should get caught. They should get prosecuted. That's my little soapbox for this morning. Then HR 7334, the COVID-19 EIDL Fraud Statute of Limitations Act of 2022 is on the president's desk to be signed. So yes. And actually, I stand corrected. I need to correct myself. The PPP and bank fraud enforcement harmonization, both of those are on the president's desk to be signed. So unless he vetoes it for some reason, which I doubt, both of those are on his desk to be signed. They're going to go into enforcement within the next, I would say, 30 days. The IRS is already mobilized to start audit. We're going to see a whole lot of people up in arms and very nervous very soon. This fiscal year is going to be very interesting legislative wise. It's an election year. Now, I do not host a political platform. I am bringing this up because, as business owners, the political sphere affects us. It affects us legislatively because the laws that come out govern our businesses. Higher taxes, lower taxes, changes in the laws, what we can and cannot do, how we do it. Electric vehicles, no electric vehicles, all of this stuff affects how we do businesses. That is why I report on so-called political topics, but I report on them from a non-political stance. There's enough political pundits out there. You don't need me political punditing for you. However, I will say this. We're getting ready to see a plethora of bills. We have midterm elections, and we have the presidential election coming up. We will have the State of the Union address coming up in a couple of months, and the president will be submitting his budget to Congress. Is historically due to Congress the second Tuesday in February. But yet and still, our government is still operating off of continuing resolutions, and it's been doing that ever since President Obama has been in office. We haven't had a budget since President Obama has been in office. I'm getting ready to make a personal opinion at this point, and it can be classified as a political opinion. I personally believe nobody is doing their job and they all need to get fired. And this is why. We need a budget. As a government contractor, as a business owner, as a taxpayer, they are supposed to vote on a budget and pass a budget. Now, the president, I don't care how you feel about him, is submitting a budget. Congress, Senate, not doing their job because they're not passing a budget. So they all need to get fired, and we need to hire people that are going to do their jobs, or we need to make them do their jobs. These continuing resolutions, these nearly averted midnight sessions to fund the government so they can slide past all these ridiculous $1 trillion funding. That's not, no. We need to stop that. So, as the glue that holds our economy together, as the business owners that keep our economy running, I don't care how you fall out politically, we need to stabilize our economy and say, pass a budget. Our contracts can't keep stopping, because we have to wait for a continuing resolution. We can't keep doing these stopgap measures because we have to wait for a continuing resolution. Congress needs to pass the budget that the president submits. Now, if you don't like it, there are measures in place for Congress to change it, Senate to vote on it, change it, kick it back to the House for the House to agree on an amendment, and they can come together and say, kumbaya, send it back to the president. If he don't like it, they can overrule his veto and we can move on. These measures are in place, but these continuing resolutions got to go. And that's the end of my political rant. But so back to the scheduled program. So legislatively, this year will be interesting. There are going to be a lot of anti-fraud bills passed. There will be a lot of changes in regulations passed. I call them sociological or sociology based regulations that will affect businesses and business policy. We have a lot of upheaval around personal identity that is creeping into the workplace and how we conduct business and interact with one another. That affects business and how we do business, and it affects the legal landscape of business, and it affects the compliance aspect of doing business. So keep an eye out for all of that as we go through the current fiscal year. We're going to see a whole lot of that, especially with some of the members that we currently have in Congress. So I had opened, I believe I only opened it to my email list. So I'm sorry for that. I had opened the floor to questions. People could submit questions. And anytime I do master classes, I do open a platform to questions. And I didn't have any submitted that I would answer on this platform because it had nothing to do with this platform. So I'm going to end this morning session with this. Join me Monday morning at 8 a.m. for my morning tidbits, which is just 10 minutes of morning news related to business, government contracting. I do that daily. I am hosting a roundtable, contractors roundtable. I just posted the link in the chat. That's where I feed questions. I ask. We have a discussion. If you want to work with my company, that's also on the calendar. But the roundtable is just where I answer questions around government contracting. It is not a free coaching session, but I do answer questions around government contracting and what contracting looks like. And I found the last one I did was very informative from the participants' perspective. So I'm hosting another one. So you can check my calendar, join in on that, and I will be glad to have you there. So with that, enjoy the rest of your weekend. This replay I'm taking a replay down off of Facebook, and LinkedIn, but you can find it on my YouTube channel, and I'm posting it on my podcast. And with that, have an amazing weekend, and I will see you Monday morning for morning tidbits. Have a good one.